Okay, let's unpack this. So imagine an anthropologist, right? He travels all across America, and he's deliberately talking to people with, well, totally different views from his own. What does that tell us about the divisions in the U.S. today?
That's pretty much the core idea, yeah. It's this journey by anthropologist Anand Pandian, and that's what we're digging into here. We're pulling from his article, his new book, too. It's called Something Between Us, The Everyday Walls of American Life and How to Take Them Down.
Right, and our mission, let's say, is to really pull out the key observations from all these travels he did. We're looking at everything, gated communities, political rallies, even just like quiet chats in parks.
The goal is to understand these everyday walls he talks about. What are they? And maybe more importantly, what did he find that might actually help us connect, bridge those gaps?
Exactly. So we'll use his work as our guide, walking through the main points, the stories he shares.
Sounds good. Where do we start?
Well, he kicks things off with a really striking example of division. Takes us straight to Scottsdale, Arizona. He describes this super exclusive residential community right up against a national forest.
Oh, yeah, that part and the security setup he found there. It's kind of wild. It's not just, a main gate.
No, not at all. Once you're inside that main gate, apparently every single little cul-de-sac has another gate.
Right. And then even beyond that, lots of the individual homeowners had gates across their own driveways.
So you're talking, what, 3 layers? 3 checkpoints, just knock on someone's door?
It's incredible. Clearly less about, traffic safety and more about, well, keeping people out.
And the security director there, he didn't really pull any punches. He told Pandian something like, people shouldn't be able to just walk into where you live.
Yeah, and you should be able to defend yourself against the rest of the world. He even compared it straight up to border security. Said immigration officers are doing the same job, defending us.
Wow. And what makes that hit so hard is the contrast Pandian draws immediately after.
Exactly, because just a few days before that conversation, he'd been out in the Arizona desert with migrant aid volunteers.
Uh-huh. And he saw the evidence, the really harrowing stuff, bits of clothing, personal items left behind by people trying to cross, just signs of, incredible hardship.
And he asked one volunteer, didn't he, about how some people seem so indifferent to all that suffering.
Yeah, and the volunteer's response was just chilling. Basically said, it's like talking to a wall.
Oof, yeah. That phrase, talking to a wall, right after hearing about the physical walls in Scottsdale, it really connects.
It really does. It perfectly shows one side of what the author's getting at these barriers, physical and maybe emotional too, built just to separate, to keep the outside out, a kind of belonging based on, well, defense.
Exclusion, yeah. Okay, so from those physical walls, he then shifts focus to a different kind of wall, maybe more about ideology, fear.
Right. He takes us to that White Lives Matter rally, Shelbyville, Tennessee. This was back in October 2017, not long after Charlottesville.
And the atmosphere he paints, it sounds incredibly tense, just thick with fear,
He mentioned seeing a Nepali woman working at a gas station looking terrified, downtown shops boarded up.
Police barricades everywhere, helicopters buzzing overhead, cops in riot gear. And the groups there, like the League of the South, the Nationalist Front, they were openly pushing, white supremacist ideas.
This is really intense. He actually wanted to try and understand the demonstrators' perspective, so he went through their security checkpoint.
And this is where that kind of strange, unexpected detail comes in.
The shared annoyance.
Yeah. The security check was apparently so slow and frustrating that for a moment, Pandian, who's brown, found himself sort of commiserating with some of the white demonstrators about the delay.
Like a tiny crack in the hostility, just based on a shared mundane frustration, stuck in line together.
Exactly. It's fascinating. Anyway, he ends up talking to this one guy, tall white man, from Brooklyn originally, wearing a Carhartt jacket. Said he felt an affinity for this side, had been at Charlottesville too.
And this conversation, it seems like it really drills down into that defensive idea of who belongs. Pandian asks him about the idea of an ethnostate, right? Asked him point blank, what would you do with people like me?
Yeah. And the guy's first reaction when Pandian explains his family's from India, but he grew up in the U.S.
He asks, aren't you guys Aryans? Which, as Pandian notes, led to some pretty awkward laughter.
It's definitely awkward. Then the guy lays out his view. It's all about ancestry. He talks about having ancestors from the Revolutionary War.
And says, our ancestors built this country for their posterity. We feel this is our inheritance. Pretty clear statement.
Very clear. Pandian pushes back a bit, tells his own family story. His dad, a cardiologist, came over during a doctor shortage, saved thousands of lives. He asks, basically, does that earn us a place here?
And the man's response.
It's interesting. He kind of concedes a little. Says something like, yeah, that's a part of our history. We can accept that. We can absorb a certain amount of other cultures.
Absorb a certain amount. Like the nation is an organism.
That's exactly how Pandian interpreted it. Like it can only take so much foreignness before it's, I don't know, contaminated or something.
But even with that small concession, the man's main point was still.
Still, there's no living with the other. That's the core belief. Pandian sees it as this fundamental lack of faith that people who are really different can actually share a life together.
And he had that analogy, right? The air mask one.
Oh, yeah. That
Yeah.
really drives it home. You got to put your own air mask on first. You got to take care of yourself before you can take care of someone else. You can't help people if you cut your own throat.
Wow. So it's all about self-protection, suspicion of the other.
Deeply rooted in it. So yeah, those two examples, the gated community, the rally conversation, they really paint a picture of belonging conceived defensively, xenophobically even, all about drawing lines, guarding borders.
Building walls, essentially. Everyday walls.
Exactly. That's one side. But like you said earlier, Pandian didn't just focus on the division. He also looked for connection, different ways of thinking about belonging.
Which takes us somewhere completely different. North Texas. The Denton Women's Interracial Fellowship.
Yeah, a powerful counter-narrative. And understanding its history is key. It emerged from the ashes, almost literally, of Quakertown.
Quakertown, that was the prosperous black neighborhood in Denton?
Thriving, yeah. Until the 1920s, when white city leaders basically destroyed it, bulldozed it to build a park for white people.
Unbelievable.
Yeah.
And the black families are just forced out.
Forced to move to this neglected part of town, southeast Denton. Pandian met a woman named Alma Clark there. She was 89 back in 2017.
And she had something sharp to say about the official reason they gave for destroying Quakertown, right? Health and sanitation.
Oh, yeah. Her response was incredible. She said basically, we went into the homes of white folk and cooked their food and cleaned their houses. We took care of their children. We were good enough for that.
Wow. Just cuts right through the hypocrisy. They relied on the labor, but pushed the community into neglect.
Precisely. So faced with that kind of adversity, what did the community do? They leaned on each other, developed these collective support systems, women helping with childcare, families building additions onto their houses to take in black college students who weren't allowed in the dorms.
That's resilience.
Yeah.
And the interracial fellowship grew out of that spirit.
Exactly. Formed in the 1960s, started pretty simply women, black and white, just opening their homes, sharing meals together, getting to know each other.
But it became much more than just social gatherings.
Oh, much more. They launched public campaigns. They fought to make the segregation visible, demanded paved streets and streetlights for Southeast Denton, and they won.
That's real impact.
Totally.
Yeah.
They organized voter drives. They did these direct actions like visiting segregated restaurants and interracial pairs. They even distributed this pledge, a good neighbor pledge, about everyone having the right to live wherever they wanted.
And they were really intentional about how they operated too, weren't they?
Very. Always maintained equal numbers of black and white members, and they made a point of alternating meeting locations 1 month in a black member's home, the next in a white member's home. It wasn't just talk, it was built into their practice.
That's powerful. And their legacy lives on.
Yeah, definitely. There's a mural, an art installation in Denton now. And Pandian notes their work still inspires anti-racist efforts there today.
And Alma Clark, when he spoke to her again more recently in 2022, she summed it all up.
She did. Said it was simple, really. We had to help each other to survive.
Necessity creating solidarity.
And then she gave that amazing analogy, the cornbread one.
Oh, right. Tell us that one again.
She said, you know, you need meal, you need flour, you need baking powder, you need eggs. You need to put all those ingredients together to make that cornbread. You can't do anything if you keep them separate.
Wow. That's the polar opposite of the organism analogy for the rally guy, isn't it?
Completely. The organism idea was about absorbing a limited amount, maintaining purity. The cornbread. It's about different things coming together, needing each other to create something whole and good, something new.
Built on interdependence, not separation. That's a really different vision of belonging.
Totally different. And Pandian also finds connection in maybe less organized ways, these unexpected individual moments.
Like the encounter in southern Michigan.
Exactly. He's just sitting on a park bench, This white guy, 60s retired mechanic, mentions he voted for Trump in 2016, just starts chatting with him.
Okay.
The guy's a little tipsy, worried about his wife who'd wandered off, but despite the potential political gulf, he offers this completely spontaneous gesture of kindness.
What did he do?
Insisted Pandian take his number and address, said call him if he needed anything while he was in town, and he said Pandian felt he meant it. I don't care if you're brown or red or whatever, just basic human looking out for each other.
Just like that. Out of the blue.
Yeah. Pandian called it a flash of some other solidarity. He was so moved, he actually went and left a pie at the guy's house later. So he felt kind of vulnerable doing it, being a stranger.
Sure, yeah.
But it just felt like the right response. A small act of connection answering another small act.
So these examples, the Denton Fellowship, the Michigan Mechanic, they show that connection and shared life. They're also part of the American picture. Sometimes born from struggle, sometimes just neighborliness.
Right. They pop up sometimes where you least expect them.
Okay, so he's taken us through these really different experiences. The walls of Scottsdale, the fear at the rally, but then the solidarity in Denton, the kindness in Michigan. After seeing all this, what's the main takeaway? What's the author's, core certainty?
Well, he leans on Toni Morrison's thinking here. He concludes the real issue lies less with the strangers among us than the strangeness within.
The strangeness within, what does that mean?
It means it's not just about those other people out there, the ones who are different or disagree with us. It's also, maybe even more fundamentally, about looking inside ourselves, our own relationship with difference, our own anxieties about belonging, who we see as us versus them.
And he thinks the way we live contributes to this, the everyday structures of isolation.
Yes, exactly. Things like our gated communities or just our social media bubbles, the routines that keep us separate. He argues they don't just reflect the divides that already exist, they actually make them worse.
How so?
They make it harder to genuinely understand people who aren't like us, harder to take their perspectives seriously, or even just to recognize their basic needs, their humanity.
Okay, I see. So that leads him to his big question then.
Right. The central question of the book seems to be, can these edges between the familiar and the foreign, these points of contact, these potential friction points, can they become places where we actually meet each other, where connection happens, instead of just being hard borders that keep us apart?
And what's his feeling on that? Is it
Yeah.
possible?
Despite everything he saw, all the deep divisions, his conclusion sounds like, well, maybe a hopeful imperative, a call to action. He feels certain that we have to find our way back to some kind of communion, some kind of kinship with people who seem outside our usual circles.
Even if it feels really hard, really daunting.
Especially then, perhaps. His argument is basically that tackling the external walls, the societal ones, means we also have to look inward, confront our own strangeness, our own barriers, and consciously try to build those bridges across the edges.
So quite a journey we've taken, following his path. From those defended homes and rallies built on keeping people out,
to the fellowship built on needing each other and those surprising moments of just simple human connection.
and landing on this idea that the real work might be internal as much as external, that how we see ourselves shapes how we see or fail to see others.
Exactly. Confronting that strangeness within to maybe break down the everyday walls without.
Which inevitably brings it back to you, listening to this. Thinking about these different ways of belonging, connecting, or separating. What does it spark for you?
Yeah, where do you see those everyday walls in your own life, your own community? They might not be physical gates, right? Maybe they're social or online or just in our heads.
And how might you personally approach those edges, those places where the familiar meets the unfamiliar? Could they become spaces for encounter? Just something.